Perfect. Thank you, Lori. Let's make sure that this actually works for us. It does. Good. Hi, everybody. I am Victor. So we're going to jump in right now. I'm the Vice President of Academic Services for Creative Learning Systems. Hello to everybody who knows me. It's great to be here and to be working with all of you. What we're going to be talking about today for a handful of minutes, and I will try to time myself so that I don't go over because I can be a bit long-winded, is talking about learning to learn. And this is really where kind of my passion comes in, and wanting to make sure that we show you how we at Creative Learning Systems instill that in students and how that process works, and then how you can take that and kind of integrate it into your classrooms, whether you have a SmartLab or not, and how our students think about these project cycles and what we have them do in a SmartLab. So all of that said, we're going to dive in right now to really what is learning. And so videos in Zoom can be a little bit of an issue. So what I want you to do is just kind of keep an eye out for what you see occurring in this video, even if you don't get audio. All right, that's enough. So that video is of my then 2-year-old daughter, Clara, in her nursery. And what you see is she's kind of reading and perusing a dinosaur book. And she kind of gets done with that and babbles and pulls, no joke, the kid version of War and Peace off of the shelf and starts reading it. It is just pictures, so it's not actual War and Peace. But this is really what we're trying to instill in students of all ages. It's really easy and it's really visceral to see it when you see it with a 2-year-old. Trying to get a 16-year-old to do the same thing is a little bit more difficult. And that's kind of what we're going to walk through, is how do you take this level of learning and engagement that's autonomous, there's a lot of self-efficacy, there's a lot of her choosing her own adventure and individualizing the learning for her. How do we instill that in students of all age ranges to help them succeed both in school and in later careers? And so that really kind of boils down for me to something that we call SmartLab Learning. And that's the underpinning of everything that we design here at Creative Learning Systems. Everything comes back to this idea of we need to knit together a cohesive learning framework for students, okay? And that's what SmartLab Learning is. And more directly, we define SmartLab Learning as the process, right? Learning is a process of increasing a student's capacity through engaged, active, and social problem solving. And it's all of those components mixed together that is the magic of SmartLab Learning, right? So it's always about the process. It's always about increasing capacity. If you think about students as, a vessel that is being filled with knowledge, our goal as kind of wanting to teach kids to learn how to learn is that we want to make the vessel bigger, right? So if we're filling up their beaker, the goal of Creative Learning Systems is to make the beaker bigger, right? So that they can hold more and they can expand on what they have, okay? And we do that through a set of engaged technologies and kits and apparatus that we provide to labs that are really geared towards engaging a student in a realistic and real world way. So it might be a drone, it might be a robot, it might be Photoshop, it might be graphic design. We want to make sure that the technology is the source of engagement, which goes back, all the way to William James, if you really want to have that philosophical discussion with me, which we'll get into later as we progress through the series. Then there's the active part, right? It happens too often that kids become passive as they progress through the education system, and they're used to kind of getting all of the answers and all of the directions from the teacher in the room. And what we want in SmartLab Learning is those kids to really engage in the active side of things. And then to really involve all of that in a project-based problem solution architecture. All of that stuff I just talked about is really based on these 5 core philosophers. There are a lot more that go into the bedrock architecture of SmartLab learning, but these are the kind of core 5 constructivists. And constructivist learning is a Western archetype. It's a Western ideal for education. So you're going to see that these folks are all mostly kind of cut from the same cloth. We have expanded that and have over the last few years been looking at more native peoples, more a wider range of Eastern and non-Western cultures that kind of can help supplement and add to and enrich the SmartLab learning process. But these are kind of the core 5 that CLS was started on. And all of their work kind of comes together into the beauty and the magic of a smart lab, right? And so we get the furniture design and the space design, looking at the work of Maria Montessori, and we get the need to observe and really record our students from John Dewey, and really engaging them and walking them through developmental cycles based on the students' neuroscience and how they're developing rather than their grade level. And those are, Erickson and Piaget. And then we've got good old Vygotsky there, who's talking to us about the need to integrate the social components of learning and the underlying kind of culture and representations of kids and how they build language and how that language informs the knowledge that they have and that they can apply. Okay. And so all of those things really go into that statement again. And so, that statement is increasing capacity through engaged, active, and social problem solving, but all of that is research backed. And so increasing the capacity really does come to Dewey and the idea of, learning is life, and that's what we should really be instilling. And then we've got, engaged, which is engagement makes academics more engaging. Back in the day when I was getting my master's degree, I wrote about how cell phones could be used in a classroom. They weren't at that time, they are now. Because they were something that the kids were engaged in. And so just simply by the fact that I was asking them to take out a device that was banned in every other classroom, I saw more engagement and more returns from my students. And so we just build on that and we say, that drone over there is engaging and we want you to want to learn how to learn with that. And then as you're learning, we're going to ask you academic questions to help ground you in those core content frameworks as you go. And then, of course, there's the active part, most recently kind of elucidated by Bandura and his team, and that, you really do need to execute. And so knowledge is great, but being able to execute on that knowledge and make decisions and move forward is what we're really looking for. And then, of course, Vygotsky and the social problem solving aspect, which is, that your cognition and your understanding is exactly the product of your socialization and interaction. And again, all of that comes together. So when I talk about SmartLab learning, which is kind of the core of this 5-tiered approach to project-based learning, this is really what is wrapped up in that. And it really is this idea that kind of learning has always been a little different here. Creative Learning Systems has been around since 1987 as a company. And when we started, we said, well, we want to be die-hard constructivists, okay? And the company started off saying, well, we're not going to provide curriculum, we're not going to provide any resources, we're going to provide this engaging lab full of possibilities, and we're going to let the students construct their knowledge from scratch. Great ideals. What you then find out is that students need to learn how to do that, and that we need to put in place a structure that leads them from traditional schooling and education to learning. And that's kind of the bridge that we provide in a classroom. And the 3 underlying parts of that is that education must be personalized, right? We need to be building on the work by Sir Ken and those folks around that. We need to take the knowledge and the learning that we have in healthcare and actually apply that to education. If you can go to any doctor and get a personalized recommendation of how you can help yourself, then we should be able to do the same thing in education. And we just need to take the steps to get us there. And 2 is the best vehicle to do that is a integrated project-based approach, where students can actually come up with their own project in a framework that supports them ideating and creating and working through. And then of course there's the third part, which is the content and the technology. And so it's engaging the students with the technology and building the supports to teach them to learn how to learn. Okay, and that's what we do. And we call it something EPDRS, and that's kind of our project cycle. And that is me having a much too long-winded introduction to that project cycle that you're all here to see. And the actual definition of that is this graphic. And it's EPDRS. It's not EPDRS or anything like that, but I do talk fast. So this is actually what it is. And each one of these letters has a very specific action that students do in a smart lab as they're building and constructing a project. Okay, so the E, the first thing that we have students do is explore, and that's structured. So in a smart lab, a student walks in and they engage with a set of technology, and they grab it from the shelf, they put it in front of them, they log into our curriculum, and they get ideas. That is explore. We want them to really understand, what is the thing that I'm looking at and what does it do? What can I make it do? Okay. Then step 2 is plan. And planning, we use SMART goals and templates. In the high school levels, we give them access to project planners and Gantt charts and all of that stuff for more integrated projects. But it really is, okay, well, you've explored, you kind of have an idea of what this engaging piece of technology or apparatus does in front of you, or software. We want you to brainstorm a plan, put a plan together, and let's start executing that. And then the execution phase is do and reflect, DR. And that's what we actually have kids do every day. And we talk to them about data collection, data analysis, optimization of product. But at the end of the day, we really do ask kids variations on 2 very simple questions. What did you do today? And what did you learn? Okay, and then they use that to update their project plan, and they continue forward. Then at the end of the project, the S is to share. And that takes a variety of forms. In a primary classroom, that could be just a bunch of kids sitting together in a circle with rug time and saying, you know, this is what I did today. I learned that with this robot, I have to make sure to draw in a very consistent line. Great. Then you might have kids at our high school product age range that are actually designing a project plan that is a business plan, executing a prototype, and then marketing it on a website. And we have several schools around the country who have set up their own business culture out of their upper level smart lab courses using exactly this framework. So the kids come in and they do a lot more of analysis as they go through each step, but they follow the same plan that we've been putting together for them since kindergarten. Now, that's me doing a lot of talking. And what I want to do is I want to go ahead and share one more video with you. And I'm going to enable the audio this time around and kind of optimize for this video clip. So just keep that in mind. We'll listen to this. This is a high school student from a local school that has a smart lab talking about what smart lab learning really is for him.
So with the SimLab, I was able to find and use projects to kind of further that learning, whether it be 3D printing and learning how to measure and model something in real life and make a replication or make a modification to it, or doing something like coding at a computer where you use math and with velocity and that kind of stuff to make a game work, but you don't think of it as, oh, I'm doing physics. I'm making a game. That's what the fun part is. And so that's kind of for me where the difference lies, is like I can see the value of what I'm learning, and learning the math or learning the science is just a step towards achieving a project goal. And for me, that's the fulfilling part, is seeing that goal come to fruition. And along the way, I learned all this cool math stuff and I learned all this cool science stuff in application.
So that's Leo. And Leo really is a great example just because he and his classmates created a business as they ended their Innovation Academy project set their first year. And his story is not unique. It's one of a handful that we see kind of around the country, where the kids really did look at a smart lab and this learning cycle as a way to channel all of the learning that they're doing cross-curricularly. So, you know, just as he mentioned, the math or the science is a means to an end. And so he's driven to understand the measurement, the data analysis, all of that stuff, so that he can go in and he can create that project and have that in-project outcome. For them, their in-project outcome was actually a drone flight program. And so they bought drones, they sourced them, they did videography, they actually worked for local police departments to do threat assessments on properties and to do drone aerial flights for real estate. And they set that up as a business because of the interests of the students. And it's something that is working really well. They actually do their own individual audio creation in the Smart Lab as well. So it's all unique to them, composed by them for the drone flights that they're doing. So it really is a fascinating story. But when I mean that it's not unique, it actually has occurred before. So there are other schools that I visited in northern Pennsylvania or you know, on the other side of the country in California, where kids are doing very similar things. And what you end up seeing is that they kind of follow a similar vein. They're working on these larger scale projects that synthesize this information. And then the things that we would traditionally say they struggle with or that are difficult are not. I had a great meeting in Detroit with a superintendent and a bunch of principals where we were talking to a robotics group of students. And this young lady got up and explained how she had programmed microcircuitry. She had built this 6-foot-high robot for a competition that they won. And at the end of the presentation, I asked the very simple question, like, you did all of these things. You programmed, you did microcircuitry, you built, you engineered, you iterated, you did all of these things. What was the hardest part? And without me missing a beat, her answer was a left-handed pair of scissors, that they hurt her hand when she cut all of the components out for the circuitry. And it's just, you know, it's kind of mind-blowing when you see that level of engagement from students in a structure that really takes all of that academic learning that they have and channels it into an end outcome, which is exactly what our project framework does. And so at the end of the day, and at the end of this webinar, which is any moment, the project framework is that EPDRS structure: explore, plan, do, reflect, and share. And that's what we use in SmartLab Learning to make sure that kids take all of the background architecture and academics that they're learning and that they've learned for their entire academic career, and they synthesize that into real-world projects solving real-world problems. And that is kind of the goal of everything that we do here at Creative Learning Systems, and the real underpinning item and design constraint around what a smart lab is. So what I want to do now is, we have some time, and you're some of the most valuable people to us because we want your feedback, we want your questions, we want any of the comments and concerns that are coming up. So Lori is here, and she will be kind of fielding those questions, and she'll jump off mute to ask a few of them or answer those directly in chat if they are there. So if you have any questions, please feel free to throw those out. I do see that the facilitator here is for Leo is on the phone, and we can throw him on the spot if we need to also. Hi, Marcus, and hi, Randy. It's great to see you both. And please let us know if you have questions.
So one of the questions that we have, and I'll just read it to you so everybody can see it, but learning potential is substantial and great examples abound. I'm interested in covering the basic learning objectives and assurance they've been met in the least engaged for whatever reason. I would like basis assessments for the learning launchers as a spot check that I can use to follow up with.
Yep. And that's from Randy. So yep. Hi, Randy, long time no see. Perfect, actually. So when you think about kind of long-term vision and where CLS, Creative Learning Systems, is headed, we have this project framework, And as we've been building out, we've been adding more and more supports to facilitators in learning to really judge their own understanding and their own academic connections. That work is continuing at a much faster step now than it was before. And the reason for that is because we want you as a facilitator to be able to have a window into the things that are going on with every student, especially if you're not with those students every day or you're not seeing them and the realities of our current world and situation. And so what that actually looks like is that we're completely rebuilding our curriculum system as we speak. And what that means is it's going to be a much more integrated and per student approach to curriculum delivery than we have done before. And so students will have their own individualized login. They'll be able to progress through courses, which are each one of our engagements, and they'll be able to check for their own understanding as they progress. So they'll fill out questions, they'll add in documentation, and they'll seamlessly, in the same interface, build out their e-portfolio and attach Google Docs or Office 365 documents to the learning as they go. You then, as a facilitator, will actually be able to track all of that. So you'll have a dashboard where you'll be able to say, you know, this pair of students who are being social and engaged and collaborative are working on this engagement, and this is where they're at, and this is the documentation that they have in their e-portfolio. Which you can get to all of that through the system that we build you, but there's a lot of integrations that you have to do along the way. And so we're really building that out for you now, that it's all housed and built into the Learning Launcher system as it is. So there will be a lot more checks for understanding, a lot more for you to see how the kids are progressing and work with them and provide feedback to them as they collaborate digitally or as they progress through a course or a Learning Launcher, so that you can really have that check for understanding as you go. Long term, we're hoping that actually we can open it up that you guys can build those as you go as well. So if there's a local engagement that you want to do, something that's relevant to you and your school and your culture, that you can actually build out that Learning Launcher yourself and give it to all of your students. And so those are kind of long-term visions, and those are all projects we're working on now. And as a current customer, we'll update all of you as we progress.
Hey, Victor, can you move the slide back to the EPDRS just so we can see that again? Perfect.
Happy to.
Yep, just to remind them of the framework that has been completed by CLS. And any other questions on that piece? I think many of the people knew about our framework and have been, those that are here have been part of the, working with the CLS family and have an understanding. And this actually has become part one of several webinars that we are putting in place over the course of the next week. So it's basically to remind those of you who are part of the CLS family that have been participating in the, have worked with the curriculum, to remind you of what the framework looks like. Those of you who are not, those of you who may be new, to give you a basic understanding of where it started. And then what happens is that in the next webinar is that what we continue with is how we can provide you with steps of what it looks like to address what appears to be the new normal, and how do we engage students at home or in a hybrid situation. So that is actually what happens in the second webinar, which is going to happen on Thursday.
Mm-hmm. And then the third webinar, so it's a 3-part series, and we wanted to make sure that we got everybody on the same page with what the learning framework was. And then we're going to start looking at how we, as Lori mentioned, apply that moving forward and into the realities of a digital or a hybrid learning model, depending on what you have, and how we can support you through that. To tune into the other webinars, they're this Thursday and next Tuesday at the same time. And so we'll be walking through all of those things and how to take this framework for learning and expand it to meet the current demands of learning no matter where you are. So yeah, stay tuned. this coming Thursday and next Tuesday, and we'll continue through this structure and how you can apply it to whatever situation you find this fall. All right. And Randy, I see kind of just a follow-up comment there. Reach out to me or to Haley, and we can help you with building in some more of that planning structure, and kind of point you to some of the Innovation Academy learning launchers around project planning and all of that to put that in there. So we have those resources to support you in building more structure for planning. And so just give us a shout and we can point you to all of those. Andy, Chuck, Charles, Bell, good to see you. Thank you for joining. And all of you who are members of the CLS family, there are a lot of names on this register that I have not had a chance to interact with for quite some time. Don't be a stranger. Give us a call. We're happy to chat through anything and help you with anything that you need this fall. So thank you all for tuning in. And Lori, is there anything else you wanted to add?
I don't think so. We will make this available and then just continue the conversation on Tuesday on Thursday, and then again on Tuesday.
All right. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day, and we'll talk again soon.